Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to continue what we're doing with the ATR and we're going to get into things like electrical powers as well as getting the FMS all squared away. We're going to avoid doing too much flying today because there's a lot to the FMS and trying to get it all set up the way that you want is really going to be what's setting you up for a successful flight. Let's get started. All right, welcome to the office. Everything's looking pretty good here. We've squared everything away. One thing I will say is there was a pretty good series of videos explaining this. I'm going to kind of do things my way, which is not necessarily what they recommend way. But again, it all depends on what you're trying to do, how fast you're trying to turn the plane around, and all those other kind of components. So first things first, we need to go ahead and get ourselves some electrical power. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip myself down here. There's a bunch of different ways to do this in this airplane. If we actually go up to the aircraft button real quick, you'll notice there's a ground power option. A lot of times when you're setting equipment up, this is definitely going to be the better way to do it. To run it, all you're going to do is you're going to throw on some wheel chocks, throw on some GPU power. We're going to float our head upwards, and we're just going to go ahead and pop on the battery. You'll see you have a bunch of warning lights here. Battery should be on, and now we're going to go ahead and that's it. And it's going to take a second. The way the electronics on this thing work is it's going to kind of run through its little MFC test. And then when it's ready, all the lights will come flicking on at the same time. You'll notice as soon as we've gotten this all set, we're going to immediately get all these different components working. You're going to see warning lights. You can see, for example, our prop brake is ready to go if we wanted to start off the prop brake. We'll be setting that up in a minute. But the nice thing is when you're running on the GPU, you don't have to worry about time. You're not going to be running your fuel on the right-hand side of the plane low. You're not going to have any issues with stuff not connecting. If you're worried about certain components, it's all going to work perfectly fine for you. The downside to running off the GPU, of course, is the fact that we have no heating. And as you can probably observe, that's a little chilly. I'm wearing short sleeves today, and that's not great for me. I feel like I'm going to have to go get a sweatshirt or something like that. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to run this aircraft off of the hotel power. Now, for those of you not familiar with that from last video, basically we have the ability to run one of our engines without the propeller blade turning. When we do that, of course, that gives us a tremendous advantage because we're not going to cause any issues where we're going to chop somebody up with the propeller. Talk about weird. So to work that, there's a couple things we have to make sure are set up properly before we do that. The first item, of course, is we have to make sure that the gust lock is engaged. Next thing we're going to do is confirm our condition lever is down. We're going to make sure our throttle is all the way down. Then what we're going to want to do is you're going to come down here and notice you're going to have a little thing that says ready next to the prop brake. We're ready to engage it. To engage it, super simple. You're going to lift the switch, click, and it's going to say prop brake. That simply means that it is now ready to go. Now, I know some of you are going, well, can I run the prop, can I run the engine and then disengage the prop brake? You can. So believe it or not, if you want to go, I'm going to do something silly like that with the actual prop, you could. Once this is set, again, you need electrical power. You need to make sure everything over here is set. It's just a matter of starting the engine that we want to use that with, which is, for me, it's got to be the right engine. So I'm going to come over here to my fuel engine real quick. I'm going to make sure my beacon and my nav light is turned on here. We want to make sure all those things are pretty much ready to rock, which we can see are pretty much good to go here. I like that. And then it's just a matter of starting that engine. So to start that engine, incredibly simple. All we're going to do is we're going to reach up here, which is start A and B. We're going to click it all the way to the start A and B. Think of those like your igniters. If we float down here, you're going to notice that we have ourselves our ITT. You're going to see what our power setting is currently. Everything is pre-built and ready to rock for you. Keep in mind, when we start running that engine off of that, we're going to start consuming fuel on that side of the aircraft, which is going to mess up some of our calculations a little later on, as you're going to kind of see in a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and go ahead and crank that thing just because it's incredibly cool. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to press the start button. You're going to give it half a second here. It does not take long for that particular component to start buzzing up here. You can see it starts to build up a little bit of power. And that'll be good. We're going to come over to the condition lever. We're just going to hold our mouse over it, and we're just going to roll it. Give it a click, and what you're going to do is you're going to get a bunch of power. You can see that we got a good light off. Keep your hand right on the condition lever, of course, in the event that we get a hot start or something like that. We can slam it back down and go ahead and shut it off. So at this time, this aircraft is now consuming fuel, and you can see we've already burned 10 pounds of fuel. We haven't done anything, but look at this, look at this, look at this. The engine's running, but the propeller's not moving. It's so bizarre. I don't know. I just find stuff like that incredibly fascinating. So once that's set up, of course, we've got a lot of good things now. We now have our DC generator. I can actually hit that, and now that that's running, that's good to go. So I'm actually going to come down here and take a quick look. We can see it's in the feather position, so that is ready to rock. The engine is turning. Now, keep in mind, we're not going to get anything off of this. Watch this. I go ahead and shut that one off, and you notice now that our DC generator is now running the power of this aircraft. Now, some of you are immediately saying, well, can I go over here and turn this on? No, you can't turn that on. The reason we can't get the AC going is on account of the fact that we don't have enough RPM in that engine to actually do it. Now, some of you are like, can I just jam this thing up to a higher RPM? I don't recommend that. That's a little sketchy, to say the least. If you desperately need AC power, just use GPU or just don't run on AC. You can work perfectly fine with this aircraft without running off AC. One thing I find very interesting here is we can't use our transformer rectifier at this time for the purposes of charging our batteries, only on account of the fact that we just don't have power for it. And we are connected this way. So that's all set. You'll notice my temperature in my aircraft is slowly going to start coming up. You'll notice the a little cross valve there is open, allowing cross bleed to come to both engines, and it's slowly going to start coming up directly. I'll go ahead and turn on the main oxygen supply. So now that that's going and we're running on that engine, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect our ground power. Like I was saying a minute ago, we're going to lose our AC. It's not going to cause you any issues. Don't worry about it. It's not game over because you cut that out. So I'm going to go ahead and take the wheel chocks. I'm going to cut the ground power off. You're going to get a bunch of angry warning lights and everything, but notice nothing bad happened to the airplane. Yeah, we lost our radar, but like, oh well, I don't need that for anything kind of a deal. One thing we do want to check real fast is just to make sure the generator is working correctly. So I'm actually going to float down here real fast. And we're just going to take a look. One of the cool things here is I can see all the different draws we have. We can see our inverter on that side is producing nothing. The inverter on that side is producing nothing. No surprise, we have no AC. If I go up to my generator on the right, you can see I've got plenty of voltages coming out of it. If I go to my left generator, which obviously isn't running right now, you can see that that's working out perfectly fine as well. So I've got plenty of stuff coming in and out of that. So I'm not worried about that at all. Again, we're perfectly fine. So now that we have electrical power and everything's ready, it's a good time to go ahead and get the FMS set up. Now the FMS in this aircraft is not bad. It's average. It's nothing extreme. It's nothing good. I'd say it's probably about as complicated as the one in the Airbus, if not a little bit easier, because the perf stuff isn't as complicated. So let's go ahead and float down to our FMS real quickly here and take a look at it. So we have dual FMS. On this particular one, I particularly like to use the one on the left because lots of reasons. You'll find out if you play with the one on the right, by the way. So I'm going to press that one first. I'm going to go to the init page, and it's going to give us some information. It's going to tell us today's date. I'm just confirming that it's accurate. Standard data, I'm not going to worry about that. We got local times, everything ready to go. I can even see I'm in Eastern Daylight Time. Now, the people who designed this FMS designed it to be pretty simple as far as the order of operations here. The general rule, you start at the top and you make your way back, down, kind of a thing like that. So I'm going to go to POS init first. You can see we have a bunch of position information. I'm going to copy the GPS by clicking on my little light soft key here. The left, I should say, not light, and click right there so that we now have ourselves a handy dandy piece. Come down here, sensors on, of course, and I can do sensor status if I press that button one more time. So I'm not going to worry about that. Looks good to me. Sweet. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come down to nav data. Obviously, you're going to see I'm out of date here. I'm not going to pay those people that much money per month for navigational data for a simulator. I'm sorry. Flight plan initiation. This is the easy part. I'm going to go up to the root button up tippy top. And this is exactly the same as the Airbus. By the way, if you're curious about your RNP, top right corner there. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in where we're starting. I'm up in Manchester, New Hampshire today, KMHT. I'm going to press the slash key, and I'm going to type in where we're going. We're going down to Bradley today. That's BDL. So after typing that in, I come up here and I click on this button right here. When you do that, it's going to show you the basic components of your route here. You can see, obviously, not a lot to it. So it's going to say TMPI. That simply means it's a temporary flight plan. Come down here, hit that execute button, and now it's going to give you a display that you're probably familiar with if you program the one on the Airbus. So right now, you'll notice we're going from Manchester to Bradley, nothing in between. That's typical. I haven't told it to. So what we're going to do for this flight is we're going to be flying via Gardner VOR station here. So I'm going to come down here, type in GDM, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the left side. And you're going to see my waypoint appears. It's automatically going to calculate all sorts of good stuff here. Like that, I'm going to press the enter key when I'm ready. You're going to push this thing about 100 times, by the way. And now everything looks pretty good. It gives me a rough estimate of what time I'm going to get there. It's not going to tell me about fuel or anything because I haven't initialized the fuel settings yet. So I'm not going to worry about that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to click on the left button next to Bradley, my destination, real quickly. And I'm going to go ahead and pick on my approach. Obviously, in the real world, we might not know our approach so far. Ooh, let's get our weather radar warmed up. So I'm going to go ahead and pick ILS-24. We're not going to pick a particular approach today, an arrival, I should say. All my stars are perfectly fine. I'm just going to press the enter key here, and you'll see now that I have Kibby, which is going to be kind of that initial fix, and it's going to take us all the way down to the ground. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and press the clear button. I'm going to click where it says flight plan discontinuity. You'll see a bunch of yellow text here. I'm just going to press next to make sure that looks okay. It looks okay to me. It looks okay to me. Press the execute button. Ta-da! And now our flight plan is ready to go. This is a very, very simple flight plan. And one thing I love is you can go here and you can see the different altitudes and stuff like that. I don't know. I just think stuff like that is super duper cool. So now that that's all done, don't push this button by accident, because a lot of people are like, oh, I want to go back to the main menu. And they go, and they mash into that button. They're like, oh. Instead, what we're going to do is we're just going to come down to the perf button. You can press that right down there. If you like to get lost, you can come over here to the menu button, and you can go back to FMS. Then you can come over here and press edit, and then you're back here, and then you can go down. So one of the things you'll see up here is you see this button that says wait. So what I'm going to do is actually mash the wait button. And you're going to notice all of our waits are empty. Now, a lot of people, of course, say, hey, would you mind, can I press this button like this to get the wait? No. For people who are familiar with the good friends over at PMDG, they thought of that. We don't have that. We have to actually do this the long way. Now, what I was really hoping when I first was playing this aircraft, and again, we don't have a big manual or anything like that yet, is I could just zip over here and click on some buttons. But it doesn't work. So instead, what we have to do, at least for me, I'm sure there's an easy way, is pop this screen open. Now, you can already see we burnt a bit of fuel here. And we have to come down to this number and add this number plus this number. So I'm going to go 25463. I'm going to go ahead and switch modes here so you can all see me do the math. Watch as I do the math. 8780, press the enter key. 34243. All right, everybody remember 34243. 34243. 34243. 34243. Keep in mind, that's our zero fuel weight. That's without fuel. Now what we have to do is dial in our gross weight, which luckily for us, I can just look. Our gross weight today is 39297. 39297. I know many of you are sitting here going, could you just dial in your fuel weight and press enter? No, that does not work that way. You have to dial your gross weight and your zero fuel weight. It will calculate fuel on board automatically. You'll notice this is not a sensor fuel on board. This particular weight is based on what we entered. It's a little different. I don't know how much I love that, but that's just kind of the way it's designed in this particular aircraft. Again, I didn't design the aircraft. Folks designed it for us. We have to kind of live with the consequences, so to speak. So, of course, if you want to have some fun here, you can go up to the button and you can press the fuel flow button. You're going to see that engine 2 right now is running 20 pounds per hour, which makes sense because remember, we're running that right now. That's our hotel power, so to speak. And you can also see roughly how much fuel we've got. So now I can go back to the return button. Again, you can go back and forth, back and forth. I don't like that, so instead I'm going to come to perf. Now, perf on this is a little different than you're probably familiar with on the Airbus. In the Airbus, we got to get like all technical and push buttons and dial and tweak knobs, and it's all sort of nutters, kind of a thing like that. One thing you'll notice is that we have ourselves a handy-dandy departure runway here. Our departure runway today is probably going to be a 24. So what I would do is I just come here and type in 24, and you can bash that button, and that would dial it in depending on how you've engineered the rest of your flight plan. I'm not going to worry about it. Important things we're going to see, though, is we're going to have a V1, a VR, and a V2. We're looking at 108. I'm looking at 113 today. If I went to perf init, this is also where you're going to dial in what your cruise altitude is. So cruise altitude today, we're not going up very high. I'm only going to do 12,000 feet. You can also select a cruise mode, in this case, max cruise, because why not? And also, if you had some kind of fuel flow factor or something like that, you could come in here and dial all those things in. But other than that, your FMS is ready to rock. So I can actually come up here at any point and press the prog button and see what my current progress is. And you can see Gardner, we should be there at 12 hour 39. That's going to be your estimated speed is about 240, which is pretty typical for this particular aircraft. You want to give yourself a little bit of latitude. Oh, by the way, there is no auto throttle. You're going to love that. Like I said, you'll tear the wings off the plane at least once. And that's it as far as flight management setup. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come float over here and I'm going to start getting set up as far as all the rest of my avionics goes. So what I like to do when I get up tippy top is I like to go ahead and dial in my first altitude. This is, of course, for us, is going to be whatever the altitude we're given when we get our IFR clearance. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and crank this sucker up. Let's see here. We're looking at it's about 6,000 feet. We're just going to go all the way up to 12,000. By the way, a huge pro tip, hold down the right Alt key on your keyboard. You're going to see this little magnifying glass, left click, and now you're going to notice that you can pop this out, which is going to make it massively easier for you to be able to see. One thing I'm not a big fan of this aircraft, it's just the engineering of it. It's just difficult to see, but at least this way it makes it very obvious what I've set myself to. You can see my flight director has already been set. It's all ready to rock in that sense. You can see altitude select is pre-armed here. I don't have anything as far as nav or anything like that goes. This is just a good time to go ahead and take a quick look at that. All right, so that's good to go. Next thing what I like to set up is I like to go ahead and run through and kind of double check to make sure everything is ready as far as the engines goes. We're on takeoff mode, which is what I want to do here. Floating up here, you can see anti-skid is set. Cabin pressure, if I want to do this manually, I can push that. I shouldn't need to do it manually. And then when it comes swinging over here, you have this page down here. Now, you're probably looking right now and seeing a million different warnings coming down my screen. As a matter of fact, right Alt click, you can actually see them all on your screen. believe it or not, that whole control panel is controlled by this little knobby thing with these up and down buttons and this validate button. So what I can actually do is I can come down here, select something, press it, and then I can actually come down here and select different waypoints, which I think is super duper cool. So I can come down here, you can see I've run through all that. That's all been preset. And you can actually pick what procedure you want to do. Now notice before propeller rotation, I could come in here. I could set all my different components. I've calculated that. My trims are set. My doors are closed. My seatbelts are on. My bacon light's on. And you can see you can actually rip through the individual pages here individually, which I think is really, 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 really cool. So if actually we were to go down to normal procedures, I could press enter, and look at this. I have all the different components I would need before taxi and stuff like that. And I just think that is the absolute coolest thing that they gave us. I can go through and press all those buttons if I wanted to. Obviously, I didn't do that checklist at all, but it's still really, really cool how that is actually built in part of this actual aircraft here. One thing I do want to warn you real quickly there is you're probably going to notice there's a bunch of different switches down here. Those are for the instrument panel pages. What I'm going to do is actually hold down Alt and click on this again so you can see this. But we can actually change what page we're looking at. For example, my navigational display here, which everything looks pretty good here. I'm going to go ahead and flip this a couple times. You can go to take a look at the route mode, or you can go to everybody's favorite arc mode. This right here will allow you to tweak the range. Obviously, I want a kind of an average range here. And that actually allows you to sort of handle that different component directly. I have a couple different bearing planners if you want to. We'll deal with changing those frequencies a little bit later on. I'm not going to stress about it right now because it will make you insane later. Of course, on here we have our systems page. You can see we're running off of that. We have no AC right now. That's okay. We have our performance page. There's a lot of performance pages in this aircraft. I just don't know what it is about this thing. But you can see all of our different components. One thing I really, really think is cool is if you actually come down here, you can actually use this little knob here to actually drive this menu around. Let me go float up here real fast. So I can actually sit here and I can press the different buttons. Like I'm not going to reset fuel. I'm just going to say confirm takeoff data. See how that's been confirmed. And then you can come over here. And of course, we can go to different pages and everything like that, which I think is just so cool. If I hit the comm page, I can open up comm, navigation, survival. We have the escape key if we want to go back a page, but all those pages are actually built into that. So if I were to go back to perf again, you can see that if I push the perf button a bunch of times, you can actually change the different components here in the event that you wanted to do, for example, a different auto throttle temperature. But in this case, you'll notice it's actually smart enough to let me click on it because of the fact that my mouse is here. Now, the reason that's so awesomely useful is if you don't want to actually surf around and have to push this button down here, you can actually just click on the option that you need to do, which makes it so much easier. Like I said, I've already confirmed that data, so I'm not going to worry about that. But there's a couple other pages you'll notice. If I press comm, for example, you'll see that we can switch our comm frequencies. If you want to change the comm frequency, just left-click on it like that, and then you can set the frequency off to whatever particular item that you need. Then, of course, you can come up here just like that. Now, one thing I want to give you a quick little hint here. When you're working with frequencies like this, if you fling back here real fast, you're going to notice that you have your volume controls for your radios. If you want to use VHF2 and actually be able to hear it, you have to take your mouse over that and actually crank it up loud enough to be able to hear it. Otherwise, you're not going to get any audio for it. If you want to talk on it, you have to actually push down on that button. Otherwise, you're going to be busted as far as that goes. Trust me, I've done that a few times already. So let's go ahead and grab our little screen one more time here. I'll go ahead and pull that up on the big screen so you all can see it. Like I said, there's a lot on this aircraft. It's quite a piece of work for 15 bucks, not going to lie here. One thing I love is you have a video button. As if I needed a video button kind of a thing like that. But if you want to look out back, you can see exactly who's standing by your door kind of a thing. And I don't know, I just get kicked out of that. Then, of course, we have the map button. I love the map button because you have a lot of control on this map button. You can do all sorts of really, really silly things. You can like move the map around and stuff like that if you are so inclined. So let me go ahead over here real quickly here. But we can go to all the different modes. If you want to be insane, you can go to map mode. You can move this thing around. You can change the way the format is if you want to do kind of like a circular mode. And the reason I really love this, and I think it's actually really, really cool, let's go swing over to the zoom mode here, is the fact that, if you wanted to go to these different modes and quickly just take a peek, you could actually activate this and kind of zip through it. If I want to return, I can hit the escape key. I can hit the escape key. Like I said, it's just so wild that I can click the zoom pages. So if you're trying to drive around in a taxiway, so let me go ahead and display that real quick. Look at how easy it is on map mode to see exactly where you are on the ground. So for example, I know that I'm going to be taking one of these other runways. I'm actually going to zoom out. I know that we're going to be taking a runway 24 here, but look at how simple it is that I can just pop this up. I know I'm going to be coming out here. I'm going to be crossing the runway right there in the middle. I'm going to cross there in the middle, head down. Of course, they would never do that in the real one. Oh yeah, they would. They'd take me across and they'd send me straight down, typically for Manchester. But you can see that map function is a great way to actually be able to go back and do that. So I'm going to fling this back over to ND. This is navigational display, and again, you can see a kind of a regular piece. If we need to go back to that map mode, I can just come back to that map mode. And like I said, isn't that beautiful? That's so convenient. Again, things I wish I had on an airplane that I normally fly. So as you can see, everything is looking pretty good. We're pretty much ready to rock. The FMS has been set up. We've set up our gross weight. Our systems are looking really, really solid. And now we're ready to actually get this thing going. So one thing I'm going to do real quickly here is I'm actually going to turn on my auxiliary hydraulic pump, and I'm going to do a quick little crossfeed here. The reason we're doing that is we're just making sure that we have pressure in our normal brakes. That's just a quick little thing that I like to do. This comes from flying too many Russian aircraft over the years, but that's going to be ready to go. So now that we're ready to start this aircraft, it's just a matter, we've already got one engine running. I'm just going to flip on the pump on the other engine. By the way, we should not have left this on. We should have flipped this back to off, because otherwise we're just basically tapping away at that. We're not really supposed to do that. And we've got a prop brake going. So one of the interesting things, which I actually find really, really cool with this plane, I'm just going through and doing a quick little mental check here, make sure everything's good, everything's good, everything's good, is we can actually disengage the prop brake to actually get the other propeller to go. So watch this. Now, if you look out the window, you'll actually, there it goes! Remember how I said we'd start that other engine? We just did. So now we've got that engine started. So now we're ready to start number one. So I'm going to stick my hand out the window. I'm doing a little twirly thing with my finger. We've got our lights on. We're going to press start one. We're going to come down here. We're going to monitor our systems very, very carefully. And that'll do it. Go ahead and pop up in the condition lever. And what's going to happen in just a few minutes as we watch it, well, actually a few moments, it doesn't take anything. We're going to immediately get a good light off of that engine. If we were to float outside real quick, you can see both of those lovely propellers are, look at how nasty that blade is. Yikes. That blade happily starts turning, and you can see we're starting to build up a little bit of torque here. Remember, this is torque. It's not the same thing as RPM. RPM is its own control here. And since the brake is off, we don't have to worry about any of those different components. Now that we have those two engines running and everything's pretty much go, again, normally with engines, after you start them, you still have to call for this, call for that, call for this, call for that. There's a lot of those kind of components to it. What I like to do now is actually like to go back to my navigational display, and I like to make sure all my surveillance stuff is working here. So what I'm going to do is I'm come down, press serve, and this is going to bring us to the page where we can change all of our good stuff with our transponder. So I'm going to turn that on. I'm also going to make sure my TCAS is turned on. One thing with the TCAS, this one works pretty darn well as far as options goes, but if we need to come in here and kind of tweak some of the settings, we do have the ability to kind of do a lot of that, depending exactly what we're trying to do. Floating down here, let's see here. React mode looks pretty good to me. Of course, we have no DC. We have no AC right now, so we're not going to get a lot of that functionality just yet. I'm just going to float down here and make sure everything looks pretty good. Now let's see, manual procedures, manual recall. Looks pretty good. I just want to make sure everything is looking solid for me right now before I start getting carried away with the aircraft. All right, both our engines are ready. We're now ready to taxi. So taxiing this one, a relatively straightforward experience. We're just basically going to release our brakes after we check our last couple settings here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and take the condition lever. I'm going to put it into the auto mode. When you do that, you can hear the engines rev up pretty aggressively, and now you're going to see all sorts of warnings. You're going to get a low pitch warning, and now you're actually ready to begin using our actual different components. So after I've done that, I'm going to float, and I'm going to get rid of all the extra warning lights that we still have. Coming up through here, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the DC generator on that side. I'm going to shut off this. It's working beautifully right now. That's working nice. Looks good. We're going to come up here. We're going to get the other hydraulics pumps operational. Come through here. We're going to make sure all of our windshield heating is set. Looks good. Signs look good. Going to come float up here. We're going to confirm all those are good. All those are good. Compartment is nice and comfortable right now. It's kind of alternating. Flight compartment, it's a little colder up here. Whatever. Coming up here, looks good. Looks good. That looks pretty good to me. We've got good lights. You'll notice all of our AC angriness is shut itself off at this point. So the aircraft is now in a position where it's actually ready to start taxiing. Now, this aircraft wants to go. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that like in a negative thing. I mean, as soon as you release that brake, it's going to rip. By the way, since we do have some power here, I'm actually going to pop this all the way to test mode, and I'll let that kind of run through its little motions real quick, just to make sure that works fine. Sweet. We'll pop that back over to standby, so we can go take a look at that a little later on. All right, that's all set. Now, one thing we like to do before we get carried away here, and again, we're going to taxi over the runway and hold short and kind of call the video. This video has gone more than long enough, if you ask me. Is that we can now go ahead and take a look at our last couple options here. If I actually press the Alt and click on it, you're going to notice that all the warning lights are out, but notice we have a pending checklist here. We can actually go over here, go through all that. We can press the recall button. Looks good to me. Whoops. I've done that a million times. All right, that looks pretty good. Yep, that's good. Yep, anti-icing true should be on and checked. Let's go ahead and check true. True is on, checked. Anti-skid is all set. Flaps are going to be 15 degrees. Click. Looks good to me. Nose wheel steering was turned on, and we are ready to go. Procedure complete. Isn't that so convenient? I just love the fact that it's just like ready to go there. We're going to go to map mode. I'm going to go ahead and close this real quickly. I'm going to go pop us back over here. And now you can see we have a nice little diagram of the airport. All right. It's finally time to get this thing rolling. Everything's looking pretty good here. I'm going to go ahead and deflect the nose pretty hard. Otherwise, this thing is going to come taking off on you. You'll see what I mean. So I released the parking brake, and notice I haven't applied a single drop of power on this thing, and it's already ripping. So what I'm going to do, of course, is I'm going to use a little bit of right power here. I'm just going to use the right engine. It's just going to make it a little bit easier to taxi here. And we're just going to make our way over to runway 24. We'll do our pre-takeoff checks, and then we'll proceed with the next part. All right, it looks pretty good. Give it a little bit of power here. And again, you don't need to hit the power on this thing. It's going to go ripping down the runway on you. Normal pilots, of course, if you had the reverser option, we can actually use the reverse on the ground to help slow us down a little bit. Otherwise, this thing is just going to go crazy fast on you. One thing I'm looking at real quickly, I'm just checking to make sure my trim is set up, which my trim is. This thing has the coolest trimming noise in the world, by the way, which I think is absolutely wild. All right, we're just going to approach the runway. Again, we're going to assume we got our clearances. And again, I'm not racing this thing right now. It's just going. It wants to go. All right, like I said, it's just super convenient that you've got that little display there. Keep on riding us out. We were on the wrong line a second ago, but they'll forgive us today. All right, looking good. Looking good. We're now going to approach our lovely little runway here, and like I was saying before, we're disregarding things like, proper etiquette or getting clearance or, calling our turns or anything like that, just for the purposes of expediency. Again, not too bad, not too bad. All of our settings were set up, our switch is gone. Like I said, we disconnected our ground power. That's always a fun, hilarious mistake to make, by the way. But notice I'm not touching anything, and I'm indicating airspeed right now. I'm not trying to. It just really wants to fly. And not being able to jam it into reverse easily makes it a little bit more challenging to control your speed without reaching out for those lovely brakes, which are going to get nice and hot as I'm cruising around here. All right, we're just going to take a nice gentle turn. A bunch of good GA sitting here. And this is the quietest Manchester airport has ever been. And we're just going to enjoy that nice long turn. Again, you're a very tiny airplane. That was one of the things that kind of surprised me. Is yes, you can fit 50 people on this plane, but it's going to be, like I said, a bit of a surprise when you see. Now, what happens from time to time is you encounter people who shouldn't be taking up the road here. So the good thing is this aircraft has a very, very, very strong bumper. So in the event that you do encounter other traffic, you can just go choo-choo right through them. Didn't feel a thing. Nice. All right, so we're going to continue our little journey towards a 2-4 here. Like I said, I'm trying to keep this thing under control on the ground. It really, really, really wants to go places. It sounds pretty amazing from the outside, but in my mind, it's just a tiny bit deafening. I'm sure you know exactly what I mean just by how deafening that noise is. So we're going to come up to the runway, do our little pre-takeoff checks, and then we're going to take off. We'll call the video. All right, runway 24, here we are. So there's a couple different things we're going to have to do to get ready for takeoff here. So first thing I like to do is I'm going to float down here and kind of get my navigational display to something that makes a little bit more sense. But one thing we can't do, of course, is if you pop up the system page real quickly, is a good time to just double check to make sure everything looks okay. We've got our ACs. It looks like it's running pretty well so far. I can go ahead and press that a few different times. And we can actually get each individual different system. Again, I'll pop this up real quickly so you can take a look. This is looking good. Fuel flow looks solid. We can come through our oxygen supply. Cabin pressure, all of our electrical systems are looking absolutely lovely. And it's just super cool that you can just kind of cycle through these options real quickly to make sure everything is working the way that you want it to do. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go to my navigational display. That's all been preset. So a couple things we want to do here, and if I'm going to actually bring this display up so you can see it real quickly before takeoff. We're going to mash that button real quick. They're going to ask us to do a takeoff briefing on engine failure. If we lose one, we're going to keep, nope, we're going to abort. Yeah, you know how it goes. Gust lock, we want to shut that off. Don't forget to shut that off. You're going to be embarrassed. Flight controls, give them the wiggle waggle. Looks good. TCAS looks good. Airflow, we're just going to look up top. Yeah, looks good. We don't have any angry lights right there. Cabin crew, hey, we're taking off. Engine bleed, it says required. Exterior lights is going to be, of course, taken off. So we're going to flip on our 2 landing and our takeoff lights. That's the one I want. Cool. All right, now we're going to make sure our lateral FD bar is set. That's just the one that's going to set that. I've already set this a minute ago. It's already to the correct direction, so I'm not going to stress about that. That's good. Rudder cam is centered. That's good. We're going to make sure that's centered. And then the last little checklist, of course, is going to be our after takeoff when we're ready to rock here. But for now, we're good. We have a little warning here about takeoff inhibit. I'm going to go ahead and press the takeoff configuration. When you press this, what it will do is anything you do wrong, it's going to immediately give you an angry warning that tells you you've done something terribly wrong here. Now, of course, when you go ahead and do that, let me go ahead and clear this page out real quick. Recall. Let me go ahead and press and hold that. It will tell you that you have a configuration error. The reason we have a configuration error here is because we have the parking brake on at the moment. The other thing we want to confirm is we don't have spoilers on this, so you don't have to worry about that. We're just going to make sure that our power management is set correctly. We're going to double check to see that our trim is set correctly. So our trim is supposed to be 1.6 if you recall. So I'm going to go ahead and set this all the way up to the correct trim position. 1.3, I correct it. But like I said, one of the nice things is they have this little pink bar here ready to go to notify you that you have made that mistake. Now, when you come over here and you mangle this, you're still going to get that angry warning because we still have the parking brake on. But the important thing is check your trim, double check to make sure your flaps are in the correct position. Like I said, you can see that we're in that particular position right there. Our takeoff test has been complete. We don't have a takeoff inhibit warning at the bottom either. We're now finally ready to get this thing going. Wow, this ended up being a lot longer video and a lot longer series than I expected here. So brakes off. We're going to carefully taxi our way onto the runway. Again, this thing does not take much to get going. Now, you have a couple different options as far as takeoff power on this particular aircraft goes. Of course, you have the kind of the default option where you're going to stick it up to what I call the notch position. That's going to give you plenty of power for takeoff. You're not going to need notch. And of course, if you're feeling a little more extreme, you can go up to the ramp position, which is going to basically give you everything we've got for takeoff here. I'm going to go ahead and take myself a nice gentle turn. It's kind of like thinking of max mode versus flex mode for those of you who have experimented with that a little bit on some of your other aircrafts. All right, going to line us up with runway 24 here. We have a life supply of a lovely runway here. One thing I want to just look at real fast before I get too carried away here. FMS, units, we're going to go to units. I just want to make sure everything is the way that I want it here. That's good, that looks good. DMH, perf init, all that's all been set. I'm going to hit my progress page, so that's looking lovely there. And now we're ready to get going. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to synchronize my current heading here because I want it to be lined up with it so it's nice and easy. What a lot of people actually will do is they'll come over here and hit heading hold immediately. That's actually going to turn on the autopilot. That's just going to let you know what the heading select is, and you can see that that's pre-selected pretty much right ahead of me. That also means once I do get airborne, I can quickly flip it. You'll notice that my selected speed right here is a 129. That's been preset for me. I can actually come over here and change that up to 130 if I want to. That's going to make it very simple to just look down at my little flight director as we get that initial climb going. Very many people are tempted to mash the nav button. Wouldn't hit that at this time. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our standard notch takeoff here. So I'm going to push this all the way forward, all the way to our notch. It's going to go whoop, and you're going to see a little warning that says notch, notch. Now, if I wanted to, of course, I could snap this up into the ramp mode, which is going to give us a little extra kind of a jump there, but that is simply not required. All right, and there we go. Very easy aircraft to get going. You're not going to be pulled all over the runway. You can see over there on our left, we're looking at about 105 as we're going to give this thing a little bit of a tug. Luckily for me, I do have external instruments, which makes it a little bit easier to look out the window. Otherwise, you'd be flying this thing like this, which you can certainly do, but personally, it makes me feel kind of short. All right, well, let's go. Once we're airborne, we're going to go ahead and slap up the landing gear handle. We're going to let that go for just a second here. It's going to pull a little to the left on you. That's just kind of the nature of the beast here. And we're just going to start enjoying a nice, relaxing climb upwards here. Notice, by the way, how long it takes for the landing gear to finish up their little kind of come underneath the aircraft. Once they're done, I'm going to put my landing gear handle into the neutral position, and we're just going to pitch over and start aiming for initial speed. All right, we're outside of the nice range there for flaps. We're going to just push this down. Usually about 7.5 degrees is going to be more than enough to get us climbing very, very naturally there. It's nothing too excessive. If you need a couple taps of aileron trim, this is a great time to do it. Otherwise, if you notice, our flight director is doing a lovely job of telling us exactly where we need to go. I'm going to go ahead and engage the automatic pilot there, and because we took so much time to get everything set up here, you'll notice my pitch hold is holding my 7.5, and you'll notice my heading select is working as well. Now, if I wanted to, I could come over here and mash the indicated airspeed hold. Now, what you're noticing, though, is I'm doing 170 right now, so that's going to attempt to hold that initial height. So now that everything's been pre-programmed and we're cruising around, everything's running very, very smoothly here, we can actually come over here and we can set this to the climb mode. Now, the climb mode's a little different than takeoff mode. You're actually going to watch my RPM come up significantly because we're still in that notched mode right now. It's going to try to manage the engine automatically. Now, as you've noticed, we've actually stuck up a lot of extra power when we went onto climb mode. So it's actually very, very interesting kind of how that operates in that sort of a way. But other than that, everything's now ready to go. We can go hit up our after takeoff checklist. Let's see here. Let's see if we got anything good. Landing gear up, flaps 0. Yep, we did all that. Power management's on climb. We checked that. That's set. Engine bleeds on. Take off and all that good lights. We'll go ahead and snap those off as well. We don't need those right now. And then all we have to do now is worry about our altimeters and make sure that's all organized. Our procedure is complete. So as you can see, there's a lot going on with this airplane. I am amazed that an aircraft with this small can have that much in terms of procedures. But other than that, it's pretty cool. The next time what we'll do is we'll take a look at the automatic pilot, and we'll take a look at how to get this thing on the ground. Enjoy.